Good evening, everyone. My name is Rahul Verma, and I work here at the Center for Policy Research. And just a quick thing for everyone who has joined on Zoom. If my voice is not clear, just let us know and we'll figure out the technical part of it while the proceedings here go on. Uh, my apologies for people who have been following our How India Votes series. I had promised that we'll do 24, and so 24 such conversations in the run-up to 2024 elections. We did 3 in July, 3 in August, and then September was a hiatus for many reasons. Uh, I was traveling, and also, some other things came up, so it didn't happen. So my apologies for that. But now we have resumed after the hiatus, and it will, continue as we started in uh, July and August. This is our 50th year. CPR would turn 50 on November 2nd. But while we go down in history and in the sun, we'll keep our mind. With me, discuss how much leaders matter in driving vote choices in Indian elections, and especially prime ministerial candidates. I'm joined by two eminent panelists, two very, very senior journalists, and between uh, confidently say that they are walking encyclopedias of Indian elections and Indian politics. Neerja Chaudhary and Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay for joining me. Let me introduce them to you briefly. Neerja Chaudhary is a senior journalist, and she has been a columnist for Indian Express for now several years. And those of you have been following her work, she recently wrote a book, How Prime Ministers Decide, and this book is here. If you haven't got a chance to read this book, I would highly recommend. Book actually covers several prime ministers leading up to 2014 elections. So she hasn't, in this book, worked on Prime Minister Modi, and she has a good reason for it, because she needs, as a time to judge a contemporary figure. And so all other prime ministers who have served in some ways have figured in this book. And also with me is Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay, another senior journalist. He has been hosting several public commentary shows, earlier with Lok Sabha TV and now with NewsClick. He's also author of several books. One of them is Narendra Modi, The Man, the Times. That book came out in 2013, just before Prime Minister Modi, who was then just Chief Minister of Gujarat and then became campaign committee chief of BJP. So in some ways, Padhyay prejudged what's going to be India's future in that sense. And so the reason I wanted both of them here for this panel discussion, because in some ways they are going to play complementary to each other. Neerjaji's book and work has covered all other prime ministers, and Nilanjan's book is on Narendra Modi. So between them, now we'll basically share knowledge and insight on how prime ministerial candidates in the past have shaped election agenda and drove voting choices, and how should we, knowing what we know of history, can think of what's likely to happen in 2024 elections. But the idea of this conversation is not just to sort of like only about 2024 elections. The conversation is to think how Indians vote, what are the factors that drive voting choices in India, and so to create a collective body of knowledge on India's voting behavior. So it's not an exercise in trying to predict elections of 2023 or 2024, but to understand determinants of voting behavior in India. And so while I'm going to invite each of them to make an opening remarks for 5-6 minutes, and then we'll dive into conversation, but just a quick thing, which is, I think everyone in this room, or even those who are listening on Zoom, would agree that leaders matter in Indian elections. They drive voting choices. We don't know, one, how much and why, right? So not just at the national level, the prime ministerial candidate, but we know even during the state elections, chief ministerial candidates matter a lot. And so at the moment, there are 5 states which are going for polls, and everywhere it seems that some faces are doing the election. So I can think of at least 4 or 5 in these leaders drive voting choices or election narrative. And perhaps my panelists and during the conversation, some of you will also bring this, is how these 4 things might be interacting, and there might be a combination of things. The first one is just a pure personality and charisma factor, that leaders have charisma and people are drawn towards them because of these reasons. Second could be ethnic appeals, since most of our study about Indian elections is largely from ethnic consideration, the caste, the region, the religion. And so these sort of like leaders are also leaders of their communities. They represent certain sort of community messages as well. And so ethnic might be driving those choices. Third could be something to do with ideological messages, which is beyond the appeal of ethnicity alone, but perhaps identity gets combined with ideology, and they are embodiment of ideological messages. They are heuristic cue. Long back, people who studied voting behavior, they made this clear that it's not easy for voters to understand details of policies. How do then voters make decisions about parties? Because in some ways, leaders are those cues. The kind of idioms they use to converse with voters actually become cues about complex policy ideas. And finally, it might be to do with simple patronage. What is the current debate between welfare and freebies and other kinds of things? These leaders make lots of promises that once we come to power, we'll give you this thing, will erase sort of like unemployment or poverty, and you'll get these benefits. And perhaps a combination of these 3 or 4 factors might be driving these choices. And so first, Neerja ji to reflect on looking the historical prime ministerial candidate or anything that she thinks is relevant for this conversation, and then Nilanjan. Neerja ji, you have to switch this on. So just press here, and yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Rahul. Thank you for having me, and it's great to be here. This is a place one has come to, but years ago, right from the time that George Varghese was here. I used to come and see him quite often in the CPR, and to be told that you completed 50 years.
Yes.
That is a milestone, and it says something, and the contribution that CPR has made over the years. We've all benefited from it and enriched by it. So I'm very, very happy to be here, to be asked to speak to you and to share any comments and to hear from you, which I look forward to. Very quickly, I thought, since I know Nilanjan is going to talk about Modi, and Rahul said, just to very quickly, a quick recap of the other prime ministers vis-a-vis elections and what they did to win them, very deliberately planning for victory. And if I look back at Indira Gandhi, where I'll start, 1977 elections, we are still talking about, we are still tantalized by why Indira Gandhi went in for 1977 elections at the end of the emergency. And there's still a debate on, I would say more than 4 decades later, when she didn't have to do it. She was on top of the situation. She had the Lok Sabha, had, time before elections were to be held. The economy was doing well. Of course, there was criticism in the Western world, but equally there were leaders who praised her. So why did she risk it? Now, that is a very fascinating story. Why she went in for elections and lost them so badly, routed all over North India, including her constituency and the constituency of her son, Sanjay Gandhi. 1980, where she got a record figure. She won by a record figure. And within 2.5 years, 36 months, she had bounced back in a way probably no other leader in the world had done. And how did she do it? And the planning that led up to this victory. So far, we believed, it was the infighting in the Janata Party that helped her. And, the three old men, Moraji Desai, Charan Singh, Jagjeevan Ram, were at war with each other, and that brought down the government. Of course, it played a very important role, as we all know. But she went about it very, very systematically, along with Sanjay. Sanjay Gandhi, who was the reason for her defeat in 1977, was the reason for her victory in 1980. So that, again, is a very fascinating story of her using Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed so skillfully that she is being considered, what would you say, an ustad of real politics by generations who have followed her. And that's across parties, I know. I know VP Singh used to say she's my mentor, openly, publicly. How to manage contradictions, how to become larger than the party, how to get the better of your opponents, using every trick in the book. All that, somebody told me in 2013, from within the BJP, you all think that Modi's mentors are in the BJP. It's Indira Gandhi that he's studied very carefully. And of course, Karan Singh told me, and I quoted him in my book, that Modi would like to be like Nehru, not Indira Gandhi, and to surpass it. But that's a separate debate. But Indira Gandhi, power for the sake of power, she perfected that. And generations of politicians still today follow her. So all to win that election 1980, very interestingly, she got the better of Raj Narayan, she marginalized, neutralized JP, she marginalized Jagjeevan Ram, all that very skillfully. But then so every politician, like you said, charisma, of course, but charisma is also built. I think courage is equal to charisma. I sometimes say this, today you have somebody like Mallikarjun Kharge at the head of the Congress party, a Dalit has never been prime minister. Suppose you were to project him. Congress was to project him. People say, no, younger people will say, oh, he's very boring, and, South may go for him. But suppose you were to cultivate him very systematically, as you've done with other people, what would happen? So charisma, yes, certainly. Ethnic considerations, yes, certainly. Caste does matter. You may not talk about it. Narendra Modi, they don't talk about OBC, though recently they have talked about it. But I know even in the 2014 elections, there's a whisper that he belongs to the Hachi caste and OBC. So that they played on that. Ideological messaging, I don't know anymore how important it is, frankly, at the ground level. It is more what I get in hand, what you're talking about as freebies. मेरे पास मेरे account में इतना पैसा आया है, मुझे इतना मिला है. How can I overlook that? So that is beginning to matter much more. Power is the ideology of every party at the end of the day, and ordinary people recognize that. But I would say that going on to Rajiv, for instance, coming back with 414 seats in 1984 after the death of his mother, it was 400. It is sympathy for Indira Gandhi, of course, but there was very deliberate planning by his cousin Arun Nehru, fielding Amitabh Bachchan against H.N. Bahuguna, against Madhav Rao Scindia, Scindia against Vajpayee, and so on. Several chosen people against the heavyweights of the opposition, which was a deliberate strategy. Arun Nehru says to Rajiv Gandhi some months down the line, remember these were anti-Sikh riots that had taken place after Indira Gandhi's assassination, and they had decided as a strategy to forward the elections in order to do well. By bring them forward by 2-3 months, whatever I remember, I think a couple of months. Arun Nehru said to Rajiv Gandhi, do you think you won the elections with 414 seats just like that? 506 were killed. And there was a Hindu consolidation. And if you want to remain in power, you will have to do 3 things. Now, with this, we are talking about 1985 and 1986. You will have to build a temple in Ayodhya. You will have to go in for a uniform civil code, and you will have to abrogate 370. What is the core agenda of the BJP? Now, it's another matter, how that story panned out is a different thing. But I'm saying there is very deliberate, thought-through strategies at work to bring prime ministerial figures to power at election time. Of course, there was huge sympathy for Rajiv. That sympathy dwindled, and from 414 seats, he came down to 197 seats. In 1989, as we saw Vishwanath Pratap Singh, who also so skillfully used the buffers issue to paint Rajiv as, I would say, not Mr. Unclean, but way away from Mr. Clean that he was known for. And he himself became Mr. Clean. And then, of course, later, he played the Mandal card to stay in power. And he used to say that I had given myself 2 years in power, knowing that the BJP was going to be my opponent. The whole process got fast forwarded because of differences in his party. But he too, when he brought Mandal, was deliberately creating a vote bank that would be a counter to the BJP. And he knew the Rath Yatra was planned 5 weeks before he took the Mandal decision. And Govindacharya says very openly that Mandir was not a response to Mandal. Mandal was a response to Mandir. So every prime minister, the driving force is to remain in power or rest power. And how to do that is, and they have all prime ministers have not just been very lucky, but very skillful. All of them, even those who were there for 4 or 5 months. So anyway, I'm going to stop here. I'm not going on to, PV Narasimha Rao, all set to do the nuclear test in 1995, thinking there'll be a nationalistic feeling that the information leaked out. So he went in for Hawala, thinking Hawala will get him votes. But Narasimha Rao was not a charismatic figure that you talk about, as if Jairam Ramesh has often said that he was as charismatic as a dead fish. So I remember going to meetings, that we addressed, and people, the moment he would start speaking, people would start walking out. So it wasn't he had other qualities and other contributions. A mass following was not one of them. Vajpayee, of course, we know elections, were thrust on him. The 1999 election, when I travel around, they'd attribute his victory to Kargil, but I think it was much more sympathy because he lost by 1 vote. Manmohan Singh also was sticking to somehow pushing through the Indo-US nuclear deal, despite all the opposition. And I think he played a role. He had a contribution in getting votes in the 2009 elections, where they got 206 votes, and a lot of them were urban votes.
Yes.
And the urban India, middle class India liked what he had done, getting closer to America and a strategic relationship with America. Anyway, I'm going to end here. I'm not going to go on.
Sorry.
Starting on the same note, what Nija said, that all the years that I have been in journalism, CPR has always existed. And great to be here. Never actually imagined when I started out in journalism that one day I'll come and be actually talking in this room. So I think it's a great honor, and thank you very much, Rahul, for inviting me as well as Nija. Nija and I, we have been colleagues for a very important period of our and the country's politics. The Babri Masjid demolition happened when we were both colleagues, so we have lots of shared memories, and we keep speaking. Rahul is a very kind taskmaster. He's given us only 2 questions. Role of Prime Ministers, PM candidates in setting the agenda of elections in the past, and how 2024 elections are going to be affected by this factor. Now, he also said that I will be speaking about Modi. Of course, as somebody who's done the biography, there's no way that I can not speak about him. Possibly I'm doomed to talk about Modi till eternity. But a major part of my professional career as a journalist has been before Modi even remotely to have the possibility, to have the potential to become the Prime Minister. Yes, I had the foresight in 2011 that when I wanted to write my second book, my first book came out way back in 1994. And every few years I would keep on promising myself, ye kitab likhte, but it would never happen. So finally, 2011, when I reached either now or never moment. So that was when I and Varsha, we were having a cup of tea in the morning. So I said, "Main Modi pe kitab likhun." He said, "Likho." Maine kaha, PM. This is mind you in 2011. So later on, when the book came out in 2013, many people asked me that, great, you had the foresight. I said, no, somebody had to just look at what Modi was doing in 2011. Suppose the Chief Minister of a state says that I am not going to allow Mr. Advani to take out a yatra through my state. Obviously means that Mr. Advani, who is the biggest icon of the party, he thinks that he is bigger than Mr. Advani. So that needs to be understood. He is definitely a potential. Whether he makes it or not is a different thing. At that time, mind you, he was not even attending the national executive meetings of the BJP. He was boycotting them because of a different reason, which I've gone into in my book. So anyway, I'm going back to what the questions which Rahul gave. I said that let me, before talking about Modi, let me actually try to contextualize what we are talking about. The PM candidates, the PMs in office, how do we actually classify these prime ministers? We have numerous of them. So I came up with 3 ways of looking at, bunching together the prime ministers of India. One is those incumbents who got re-elected. The second category would be those incumbents who got voted out. And the third would be that the challengers who were successful. There would be, of course, many would say the challenger was not unsuccessful, but then it would have a duplicate classification that incumbent who was re-elected. So you will have. It's always very fascinating, even while writing the biography of Modi and writing about the manner in which he goes on campaigning. And even afterwards, the last 10 years, a lot of my writing has essentially been on the Prime Minister. It's always been very challenging to go back to the first election of India. What was Nehru talking about? What was the political backdrop at that time? We of course know that it was a badly fractured and a splintered nation. So what was Nehru doing? Some of the figures, mind you, he was at a time when he was actually going by bullock cart. There were actually several places where he went by bullock cart. Reports say that, 25,000 miles he traveled. And he personally addressed about 3.5 crore people out of a total population of 35 crore Indian population. What was he talking about at that point? I find it very fascinating that somebody having the courage, despite the partition, despite the fact that there has been a Jansanghh which has been set up, its alliance with the Hindu Mahasabha, with a very charismatic Shyama Prasad Mukherjee in the opposition. He keeps on talking about communalism, strong anti-communal content, Hindu code bills, need for gender equality, women should be empowered more, not just in politics, but also within the families. Those are the kind of things which he keeps on talking about. And he says in several speeches that democracy is very important to keep India united. I think that is a very important message which we need to understand, which came from Nehru's campaign in 51, 52. 57, more of the same, but some of it is also what he's achieved. He's actually set into place. He's also looking back at how the government functioned, which have been the major gains made. Mind you, by 57, the states have been made, the States Reorganization Act has happened. So a lot is happening. 62 is a bad election. It's not a very, Nehru is not, he's beginning to lose touch. So, when we talk about incumbents who were re-elected, I would like to put, even add Indira Gandhi in 1967 as an incumbent, not just because she inherited the legacy from Shastri. Shastri never actually took the Congress into any election, as we all know. So Indira Gandhi in 1970, the first ever midterm election which happens, is also the time when personalization of elections happen. There's one thing which I forgot to tell you, that Nehru in 52, he is not at all personally critical of his opposition leaders. Jayaprakash Narayan, he says that he's a very nice person. You must go and listen to him also. And only after listening to him should you decide that who do you want to vote for, the Congress, or do you want to vote for the opposition the other time. 1970 is the first time when actually personalization, the individual starts becoming important. वो कहते हैं, इंदिरा गांधी स्लोगन इज, वो कहते हैं इंदिरा हटाओ, मैं कहती हूँ गरीबी हटाओ. She brings in मैं into this, and it continues in 1980 between the two elections, 1970, which she won with a fairly thumping majority, and 1980 when she comes back, to which Nija was referring to. This is Shrikant Verma's brilliant slogan, was one, the poet Shrikant Verma. चुनिए उन्हें जो सरकार चला सके. Vote for a government which works. That was the direct English translation. Once again, Indira Gandhi saying it. It is Indira Gandhi once again, that in comparison to the bunch of 3, 4, 5 disparate leaders who could not run the Janata Party over to government, she comes in completely. So the individual has always been there, right from 1970 onwards, has always played. Incumbents who were voted out, Indira Gandhi was of course voted out in 77, Charan Singh, Moraji combined was voted out, Rajiv Gandhi in 1989, BP Singh, Chandrasekhar, voted out in 1991. The mandate was not for anyone because it was, whatever was there, was primarily because Rajiv Gandhi got assassinated in the middle of it. Narasimha Rao in 96, we used to joke, Nija would remember that one of the things we used to say, that Narasimha Rao essentially is not looking beyond his tenure. This is something what we used to, as journalists, we used to say, that this man does not be showing any interest in trying to win the 1996 elections. Of course, the nuclear test was there, but I do not know that how much of it would have really benefited at that point. Vajpayee lost in 2004, a very important election which we have not been able to understand as to what happened. It's very easy to say India shining collapsed, people did not buy it. Manmohan Singh went out in 2014, for a large number of reasons to which we can talk about. 2004 is also, I look at it that a challenger was successful. Here I would actually put Sonia Gandhi as the challenger who was successful, because she is the first real campaign leader who rules by proxy, at least in the beginning. Yeah. Thereafter, UPA 2 was a slightly different thing, but still by and large, that is something very important. And of course, the biggest success, barring 1977 is also a very important election because you have a faceless challenger. You do not really have any clue. I remember I was not just about trying to finish in school in 77. But yes, there was no clarity as to who will be the Prime Minister, whether it is going to be Jagjeevan Ram, whether it is going to be Moraji Desai, or anyone it could be there. Similar kind of a situation was there in 1989, even though VP Singh was the challenger, but yet after that there was that big melodramatic meeting of the Janata Dal where first Devi Lal was elected and, so just one anecdote involved with that. That is the first time I understood that how markets are going to get determined by politics. I used to work for a newspaper where, it was a weekly newspaper, Sunday Mail, and we were having the editorial meeting. My editor was TVR Shenoy, and we had a colleague who was a very prominent business writer and who was one of the assistant editors. And we used to hear all about stories that he plays heavily in the stock market. At that time, no journalist understood the stock market. It was as if, a lunar space. We were in the middle of the editorial meeting where one of our colleagues came from the teleprinter room and announced that Devi Lal elected Prime Minister, elected Prime Minister, Janata Dal leader, whatever it is. So all of us got into this, oh my God, how did it happen? This man went out, our assistant editor went out, picked up the phone, dialed a number, and he said, boss, Sara bech do. So it was later on, he asked that, what did you do? So said that I just told my broker that sell off. Sell. Because it would stocks would crash. Then he explained to us, he was a very nice man who took some of us, for lunch very regularly. So during one of those lunches, he explained that as to how he made a lot of money over the few hours between that afternoon and the next morning when he rebought those, and then sold later on. So that is what, this is how I actually classify, various prime ministers and dictated, and I think a lot more has to be done. Now, when we come to Modi, I was, actually at the prompt of Nija today when we had a conversation that what are we going to be talking about? So I tried to that if anybody asks me that how do you reduce Modi's election campaigning? You have to reduce, you can keep on talking. So I would reduce it as the good old pride prejudice. I would add just two more things, not just dependent only on Jane Austen. Publicized performance. Pride, taking pride in oneself, enabling people to take pride. Gaurav, see the word Gaurav, number of times it has featured in all of Modi's elections right from 2002. He took out a Gaurav Yatra in August 2002. That's the first real political strategy he does to win the elections in Gujarat at a time when the BJP was not poised to win it. Had Godhra not happened, the big question marks if the BJP would have won it or not. So right from the beginning, it's all been about enhancing the pride of the nation, of the people. Even now, what he says, one of the points which Rahul also mentioned, the enhanced pride of nationalism, all that. Prejudice is very important because you have to create an imaginary other. 2014 election, he talked about Vikas. Everybody said that he's actually left his past behind. But how does his prejudice, how did he actually leverage the prejudice against the religious minorities, the Muslims in this country? He would call UP Sarkar as Sultanate. He would call Rahul Gandhi as Shehzade. Those are the way things were pressed. It's been a constant since then. I would tend to disagree with Nija that how much is ideology important. I think it's very important for Modi. Even now, ideology is one of the core things where Hindutva is very important, which gets worked on. So BJP's is actually since 2013 on the time Modi took charge of the campaign, it has been a BJP combo package in every election. You have, of course, ideology, Hindutva plus Modi's charisma, the leader. You have this entire thing of nationalism, you can call it enhanced nationalism, enhancing global pride. Every now and then we keep on hearing that G20, Izzat Badadi, those are the things. I remember in 2016, we were writing articles at that time that how he came back by enhancing India's pride in UAE of all countries. That's I remember. this new narrative which has been created that I am the first and the only welfare government in the country which has ever been there. You know, this entire Labharti narrative has actually been popularized. And of course, there is this huge organization which was already there, which has been further strengthened, coupled with this, a relentless publicity. This is how actually it has been there, the BJP, the Modi campaign. If anyone has to actually defeat the BJP or challenge it, it can either be on purely mathematical terms, you know, in terms of there is an index of opposition. You can actually say that even in 2019, they had only 38% of the vote, which means that 62% of the votes, and we can presume that the predominant majority of them are Hindus, do not yet still vote for the BJP. So you can do that. What has happened, you know, something very significant has happened right from 1970 onwards, when the individual started playing a role in Indian elections, is that democracy has been hollowed out from all political parties. It happened in the Congress. We saw it how it happened under Indira Gandhi's rule, and we have seen it in the last 10 years how it has been the entire collective functioning of the BJP has been sucked out of the party. These are just my initial comments.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I greatly
Sorry,
enjoyed both
taking
your
quite a lot of time.
sort of initial remarks, but I think the way you began is very interesting to think, classifying or typologizing leaders as challengers and incumbents and when they get elected. I'm going to basically pick on some of the points both of you made and ask my next set of questions. But before that, I would like to request people who are on Zoom to put your questions on Q&A box or chat box, and my colleague Prakriti would send me. So please keep putting your questions there. After this round, I will take questions from Zoom as well as in the room. But let me sort of like Nilanjanji, where you ended, I'll pick two of your thoughts and ask Neerja to reflect on this. First one, she actually said that, you know, PM candidates, like it's a deliberate planning and strategy to win elections and to retain power. Now, do challengers and incumbents have a very different set of strategies? And if you can sort of like elaborate using any example, what kind of course, like they are going to have different set of strategy because one is trying to retain, other one is trying to mount a challenge, but something like some anecdotal interesting evidence. Second is something to do with what Nilanjan said at the end, which is parties are getting hollowed out. It's centralized, leaders matter more. And since you have covered so many elections on the ground, my question sitting here in Delhi is, do people care about sort of like the local candidates? Do they matter at all? Or is it just the face in Delhi or the state capitals that drive entire election?
You're asking me to?
Yes, yes, please.
Let me take your second question first. I think we've reached a point in the country where in the state elections, local candidates matter.
Okay.
Their caste matters, their performance now in Rajasthan, Chhattisgarh. I've just visited those two states in the last 8-10 days. And I find anti-incumbency against the existing MLAs is a big issue. And Congress has changed candidates. Of course, it's facing rebellion, 22 candidates in Chhattisgarh, a lot of rebellion. BJP hopes to encash on it. So it does. But even at the state level, I find the top leader is increasingly beginning to matter more. It's not just the party. There is Ashok Gehlot leading the Congress side or defending the Congress side, and that people talk a lot about him. They don't talk so much about the Congress. So also Bhupesh Baghel. In Chhattisgarh, it's about Bhupesh Baghel, that election. I was very surprised to find. So the presidential form is increasingly becoming a factor, even at the state level. Whereas local things will matter. Kis jaat ka hai, dusri side kis jaat ka hai. independent kitna kaatenge, all those things will matter. But this factor is also beginning to matter much more than was the case earlier. Now, your first question was on the strategy of the
Challenger versus
challenger versus.
defender.
Now, I find Modi a fascinating. Nilanjan has done a good
Yeah.
study on this than I have. But मुझे लगता है मैं पूरी तरह समझ ही नहीं पाई हूँ मोदी फिनोमिनन को. मुझे कई बार लगता है, yes, of course, it's हिंदुत्व, हिंदू हृदय सम्राट. Yes, of course, it's national pride, nationalism. Yes, of course, it's, social welfareism of a kind that people have not seen. People have got things in their hand. Yes, it is about a strong leader, and people want a strong leader, leader who does not have a family in tow. Kis bete ko chhod ke jayega? Everybody says that. But somehow I feel पूरा आंसर नहीं है. मुझे जो लगता है, कि मोदी, the response to Modi is a response of a changing India. And we haven't fully comprehended how quickly that India is changing and what it wants. And we need to do, at least I feel I need to understand far more. Usme ek element hai, it's very unformed, but I'm going to put it, I'm going to try and articulate that. Modi represents, he's come through the ranks. And a lot of people in small town India, village India, identify with that social upward mobility. Kahan tha? Through the ranks, kahan pahunch gaye? And that is possible to do that. And somewhere he's felt the pulse. Of course, he's understood, the communication revolution, what Nilanjan was talking. How do you cultivate the leader? How do you amplify the message? He's understood all the things that are available today with technology, communication techniques, PR tricks, all that's available around the world, and the best that's available. He has used it to do that skillfully. But I'm talking of something, more, this feeling the pulse is often aspirational India. Opposition ki side mein jo hai na aaj, and I'm taking that as an example. It's a gloom and doom message. GDP ka ye ho gaya, economy ka wo ho gaya, sab hum doldrum mein ja rahe hain. He's talking about 50 years hence India. This is what India is going to, whether or not it's related to reality, doesn't matter. It makes me feel good. Just as demonetization, so many people suffered, but I traveled through UP after that. और जो मैंने सुना मैसेज, बहुत अच्छा किया, अमीरों को ठोका. And I think demonetization helped him win the UP election afterwards. Now,
It is calculated for that.
yeah, well, it was calculated, but I mean, they got it horribly wrong. And they kept shifting the narrative, but they managed to retrieve the situation and pitch it that way. So what I'm trying to say is, has our democracy been an elitist democracy, which has not mattered to the vast mass of people? I mean, Nilanjan and I are very exercised about what's happening to the media. हमको लगता है हमारी freedom जाएगी, हमारे freedom to speak, anybody's freedom to speak, even to say, I'm not being given my due. I need, this is my right. If you don't have that freedom, then what is there?
Yeah.
But does that ordinary chap, मुझे किसी ने छत्तीसगढ़ में, राजस्थान में बोला, I was shocked. I had not heard this before. We said, तब तो election भी खत्म हो जाएंगे. He said, होने दो election खत्म, पर हमको मोदी चाहिए.
Oh, okay.
Judiciary की autonomy जा रही है, लोगों को नहीं फर्क पड़ता, उनको तो कभी न्याय मिला ही नहीं. Therefore, those who born with the silver spoon, which he equals to Rahul Gandhi or the Gandhi family, and there is resonance there. Lot of, that our democracy has been you know.
No, true.
Yeah, and somewhere he represents the devolution of power, which is part of the democratic process also.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think we need to, of course, media's rights, what is happening with the media, it causes huge worry. And what is happening with the judiciary not doing what it should cause of huge worry. Parliament not being able to play its role.
Hmm.
I mean, these are very worrying trends, and you wonder where our democracy is going.
Mhm.
Certainly.
Hmm.
But what I'm saying is maybe we need to think much deeper.
Absolutely agree with
And
you.
maybe we need to think much deeper. You're all into much research much more than हम तो जल्दी जल्दी में लिखते हैं घूम के, but you are able to study, and I think we need to connect with the ground. What are people thinking? What are people feeling? What is it? Where do they want to go? Where do they think things are going wrong? What worries me also is, why is the Hindu got so Hinduized?
Hmm.
What has gone wrong? Are we looking only for solutions or explanations which are very superficial? That historic baggage hai,
Hmm.
brainwashing kar diya hai, politically you managed to do it. Do we need to go deeper? I don't know. These
Yeah.
are questions that come up, and I have no answers. I have few answers.
Usually, just to quickly bring back to you on like short question, which is, I completely agree with you on some of the things that you mentioned about the current movement, and we don't understand. In fact, like survey data clearly shows that voters in India across party lines do share anti-democratic traits, basically support for strong leaders and not actually caring about institutions. And largely, this is happening because the institutions have failed a vast majority of Indians living in rural areas. But the question, like, which I wanted you to reflect on, looking at past prime ministers, is this strategic difference between challengers and leaders. And I think using Modi versus current example, you're saying that those who push for some sort of like positive messages are likely to do better than those who are only going to play on the gloom and doom kind of campaign.
This is because of today's mood, I'm saying.
Okay.
Of course, there are, it is also true. I'm not saying that economic distress is not there.
Okay.
People are hurting. There's no doubt about that. They're feeling that pinch. Like again, Rajasthan, there's a रेड़ी वाला, वो ये बिस्किट बनाता है, खटाई बनाते हैं ना, वही अपनी रेड़ी पे, उसने कहा मैं तो नहीं मोदी को वोट करूंगा, मैंने पिछली बार किया था, क्योंकि ये सब ई कॉमर्स, इतने मॉल से आप क्या खरीदते हो, मेरा बिस्किट खरीद दो, आप तो वहां से ऑर्डर करते हो ना, मेरी तो रोजगार, मेरे तो पेट पे लात मारी है आपने. So there is that opinion also. But that, the other side, of course, it's a 28 party alliance. It's not so simple. To get one-on-one contest is a good strategy, because if they can bring down the BJP tally by 70-80 seats, then the game is open.
Yeah.
It could be any leader, checks and balances will kick in. So that's a good strategy. But then you wonder, how are they going about? How effective are they? What are they about?
Yeah.
So it's not very satisfactory, I would say.
Thank you so much, Neerja. Niranjanji, I'll basically request you to reflect on two questions. One is something where you disagreed with Neerja ji on the ideology questions, and since this is one of my hobby horses, you mentioned about Modi and BJP ideology. But I think Neerja ji has an interesting point there. Like, is there ideology among other prime ministers and leaders? Like, have they campaigned on some ideological messages, or is it ideology on one side and no ideology on the other side? And second is sort of like more of a twisted, funny question, and depend how you want to answer that. Since I would also like to put some money in the market, who do you think after, going forward, since you have predicted one prime ministerial candidate in the past, if I ask you today, we know from BJP side it's Prime Minister Modi for 2024, but beyond 2024, if you're looking at chief ministers today, who are you think going to be in the race? So that when that happens, I put my money.
So since you were talking about money,
Uh,
and we are essentially talking about a Gujarati candidate,
uh,
where in the culture of Gujarat, the financial market is very important. Let me take that one.
yes.
I will not give you an answer to that, but I will actually just elaborate a bit on what I have been, what I wrote and have been writing over the last 3 months. I see at the moment, whatever little I am able to understand Mr. Modi, I see a certain amount of anxiety in it.
Okay.
Not the kind of certainness which was there by about March 2019. On the 19th of February 2019, there was no certainty within the BJP that Pulwama would work, because that is the time they actually accept the Shiv Sena's demand for more seats. So I think I saw that as a symptom that they are not very sure that hame aapki zarurat nahi. By March, he became more confident. At the moment, I see, reflections of 2018 in 2023. We all remember that Pulwama and then Balakot changed the narrative. Possibly the elections would have been the same. Maybe BJP would not have got 303. Maybe they would have got 283. That is open to. So I see a very strong, a search for an overarching narrative which Mr. Modi has not been able to find yet. One single issue. That is why it has been cobbled together through various things. You have a Ram Yagni being announced from the 22nd of January, when the temple is going to be consecrated, to the 17th of April, when Ram Navami is there. We all know what Mohan Bhagwat has said about Ram Navami, what Mr. Modi also said. So these months is actually going to be Ram Ram everywhere. Mr. Mohan Bhagwat has also said that every Indian need not go to Ayodhya, do something similar in your place at the residential colony. Just to give an example, where we said one new temple was coming up and it is being inaugurated on the 22nd of January. So this kind of a thing is going to be happening in a large number of places through the promptings of the Sankalp network. So that is your question. That, yes, there is worry. Now, based on this, where you want to put the money is your choice.
Okay.
Whether you think that the anxiety is, it should not be taken very seriously. The second question is a bit more elaborate. I'll refer to two things. One is that the first time that I understood the world of politics, 77 elections. There was one dominant, as school children just finishing school, there's something very strongly being articulated in the campus town that I grew up, that democracy nahi chalega, India requires dictatorship. There was a very strong, throughout that period, there was a very strong sense that India requires strong dictatorship. Democracy is for the losers. Through the 80s, there was this constant voice being heard that army rule is also good. We somehow or the other, Indians believe that discipline is, India requires more discipline, and we require some kind of an army rule. Again, a sentiment which was there from within small sections of the middle class. Towards the end of my book on Modi, I was asked, by the time the 2012 elections had come out, and so I was speaking with somebody that what is it that Modi, how does it click, what happens and what is he going to do? So he asked me a question. He said, "Ek baar, have you ever given a thought as to why Mr. Advani, when he went to Pakistan, why did he make that gymnastic?" I frankly, at that point, I couldn't figure out. So he said, because उनको लगा कि आप हिंदुस्तान के राजनीति के स्टेज पे दाहिने से नहीं घुस सकते, आपको या तो बीच से घुसना है या फिर बाएं से घुसना. The very figurative kind. तो मोदी को समझ में आ गया है कि आप नाहीने से भी घुस सकते हैं. I think that is something very important. That number of all of us have to just reach out to our middle class friends who are not politically articulate like we are, or do not share our views, even if they are articulate. A large number of them would have previously not been having the courage to actually say that मुसलमानों को बहुत ज्यादा मतलब दिया जाता है. This idea, that they're given to तुष्टिकरण was a word which really was felt by a lot of people. Modi gave them the moral courage to say, "Hi, this is true. They are pampered. They are, they need to be told. This is our country." There was one, since somebody very, from the world of cinema said that my mother, his mother was a Muslim. He is not a Muslim. The father was not a Muslim. Sorry, I'm just correcting myself. So he would say that my mother used to always tell me कि बेटा भूल जाइए उनका मुल्क है. So this sense, that this is actually a country of the majority, the Hindu community, was there among a large number of people. I think Modi has given the courage to that, to be able to say that the number of my middle class friends, are all are in, alumni WhatsApp groups, school children, school boys WhatsApp group, all full of this kind of messaging system which goes on. So I think Modi had the courage to actually own what happened in Gujarat in 2000. Nobody else would have had the courage. Vajpayee did not. He blamed the defeat on 2004 to 2002. Right? Vajpayee, I do not think that Vajpayee was kind of coerced by Advani and the others to allow Modi to continue. Of course, he felt that Modi is he's going to deliver Gujarat for me, so at least one headache is taken care of. So that is something very important which we have to understand in terms of Modi, getting the courage. There was another, Nija's thing, that talking about one person saying, "Pichli baar I voted for Modi, is baar nahi." I'm just saying something because I think it's a very important point which came to my mind while I was thinking. 2014, he came to power, promises of Achhe Din, that Modi will deliver. 2019, the central message, by and large, was besides Balakot and Pulwama, was also that he is trying. I see, if at all, at the end of the 2024 elections, if we actually all of us sit together and then work at how much did Tina factor work, we will say it did much more than previously. So, which means that if you look at a graph of Modi, it is declining from 2014 onwards. The fact that people are saying कि Modi नहीं तो कौन होगा, इनमें से कोई होगा. So here I go back to what you said. You cultivate somebody who is unput down. What are the, we have to keep in mind that 62% of the Hindus, to my mind, of the Indians did not vote for the BJP or Modi, because it's essentially a vote for Modi. Who are these 62%, of Indians? There, of course, minorities are there. So within the Hindus, there is a fairly large section, more than the majority, which is not voting for them. How do we look at who are these? You start classifying them. That there are. I was reading a survey somewhere, that even now the most, eulogized leader in India, about whom they have the greatest respect, is Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes.
Everywhere you find. There is a certain amount of, has to be a logic that why has this term urban Naxalites been prioritized by the BJP? Because they know that there is a significant section in this country which is left of center, which various shades of left, from Sitaram Yechuri to the ML people to those in the Congress. There is also this old Lohiite school, the Samajwadis. And then there is, of course, a very important caste-based break of society, that is the Ambedkarites. So these are the people, who are there, and collectively, I do not see at the moment the BJP being able to get a majority within the Hindu community. So I think as a preliminary exercise, this one-on-one contest, raising the index of opposition unity is enough. And this is, I think, the primary reason as to why there is a scare within the BJP, especially in the Prime Minister.
Thank you, Neelanjan. Now let me take 2 to 3 questions from the room, and then I have some questions from the Zoom. So please keep your questions direct and brief. Anyone, both my yes and yes, sir. Equally. Let him start and then, but please be brief.
Has the Ram temple not got encased and it doesn't matter now at this stage? And second is, there is so much of wrong competition about freebies. How is that going to affect
Okay,
the voters?
Chief, thank you. Please.
Thank you so much for the conversation. My name is Nipun. My question is regarding a thought which has come up lately that BJP is also going the way of Congress in terms of concentration of power into a leader and the organization. So Congressization of BJP. BJP ka Congressikरण ho raha hai. So I just want to understand the comparison between Indira Gandhi and Narendra Modi as a leader with respect to the organizational concentration. So the lines are blurred between the leader and the organization. So all the eggs in one basket. So is there any comparison? Can we draw any strands between these two leaders and Congress and BJP of those times and now? Thank you.
I had 2 questions from the Zoom as well. One is some of the questions have already been answered, so I'm not asking all questions. One is, as veteran journalist, you have written prolifically over the years. In your opinion, in last 1 decade, what was the most surprising political sort of like thing that happened in Indian politics? And second is, now that Women Reservation Bill has been passed, why have we not seen a serious sort of like a female contender rising as a PM candidate? And will it change with Women's Reservation Bill? So anyone, Neerja ji, you can start, and you don't have to reflect on all questions. Whatever you like, you can just choose to.
Well, women reservation bill, if I start with that, a big step because it is a commitment made by Parliament this time. Now, when will it be implemented is the question. It looks as if, because it's linked to the delimitation exercise, it's not going to be there for at least 10 years. And delimitation exercise may run into north-south wrangles. And that may go into courts, God knows how long that will take. And what will happen to the Women's Reservation Bill as a result? Will it also happen 10 years? Will it take longer? So those are question marks. But what one had hoped for was that the fact that the bill has been passed and backed by all parties would lead the parties to give more tickets to women in these elections. But one hasn't seen that certainly happening in the assembly election. So that is very disappointing. As far as the biggest development politically in the last 10 years, I would say the rise of Narendra Modi and the complete paradigm shift that's taken place in the country. And one hadn't expect, you were talking about popularity, Neelanjan. If I was looking at Nehru, 52 by 62 was quite unpopular. Of course, he died in 64. So maybe one shouldn't compare. It's not quite. Indira Gandhi, 66, 76, 77, lost 3 elections, quite unpopular. Then you have Vajpayee, 98, 2004, not even 10 years, lost the government. And again, Narendra Modi at the end of 10 years is almost as popular as he was in 2014. Of course, the elections will show that, but from the surveys and all, maybe a percentage here and 1 or 2%. So it's a phenomenon too.
Ram Temple.
I just want to add one thing, Nilanjan, just one thing because it struck me. I wanted to, this thing we were talking about the elections and people not being, are now talking about anti-election trends, endorsing dictatorship. There have been other kinds of voices one has heard. I remember a taxi driver recently saying to me, अगर चुनाव को इधर उधर किया इन्होंने, तो भगत सिंह खड़े हो जाएंगे. So there is that sentiment. On other things, on our institutions, people may not react in that stronger fashion, but on elections, there is also a counter kind of view. Sorry, Nilanjan.
No, no. So, the question on Ram Temple, Ram Temple on its own may not be able to deliver, but there is a Ram Plus thing which is being done at the moment. You are having parallel narratives going on in Varanasi. You have cases also in Mathura. You have other disputes coming up, various stages of litigation. You have Bhojshala in Madhya Pradesh. You have that mosque near Mangalore. There are various other cases. There's the Taj Mahal case, Qutub Minar cases, so and various to essentially keep the story running. You also have the Places of Worship Act hearings are to begin, I think, it was supposed to have begun by the end of October. I do not know what happened. It's to actually check out that what happened. Has it got pushed back by the Supreme Court? But again, that is there, which is again a Places of Worship Act. If a judgment comes before the elections, it is going to be a win-win situation for the BJP either way, because if the law is scrapped, then it means that every disputed site is going to be, quote unquote, restored to the Hindus. If not, then it's a promise that if we come back again, we will do it. We'll repeal this law with the strength of parliament. So, and we are in any case, the issue of the basic structure of the constitution has been targeted by the vice president. Regarding this, congressization of the BJP, there's a very nice, anecdote which I keep on, I've written about it also numerous times because I find it very important and actually, explains what really happened. This is after the 91 elections. We were all just about finished covering the elections, all tired, and we all assembled. People who used to write on the BJP assembled in the BJP office. And as usual, the only one person after the official press conference was over, some of us went and assembled into the room of Govindacharya, which Nija would remember. That is where the real story lay. So then he started handing out, that this is our projection. We are going to get so many seats from Madhya Pradesh, so many from here, and listing out the states. One of us asked Govindji that, so aap log kya Congress ko replace kar denge? So he laughed, typical hearty laugh. Said, replace nahi, hum agle Congress ban gaye. Said very spontaneously, but that is what I think actually happened. The Congressization of the BJP has happened. Rahul was talking about, Indira Gandhi being a model. I think you only said, Indira Gandhi being a role model. Or was it which is actually true, we, right from 2013-14 onwards, we were actually drawing parallels between Indira Gandhi and Narendra Modi, and we find very striking similarities between them, even in terms of, the attire, using, the performative part of Modi's, persona. The recent Kailash Yatra, which he did, was a complete, act of, and, I would say that for the use of absence of any other word, I would say that it was possibly a very stellar performance, what he did in that hold, how he functioned, and actually went up that last 50 meters or the 100 meters. It's a different thing that there was a road accident in the same place some days immediately after that, and nothing really got reported about it. So that is there. Women's reservation, same thing what Nija said, that yes, it has been passed, but then it's like a post-dated check. We really do not know when it will be cashed.
Let's take a couple of more questions from the room. See, we're talking about women reservation bill. At least women should be asking questions. Any of you have any questions? Lily, oh, sir, yes, go ahead, please.
Hello, I am Ravinder. So the biggest problem is the government is failing on development matters. Very, very poor performance. Even Gujarat Metro working. And such things are not being reported. Because ultimately, it is the development, which will, you can say, make our country, better. And it is totally flopped. And this is not a election issue. Why this is not happening? और मैं रोज लिखता रहता हूँ, दो तीन तीन आर्टिकल जो है ना, रोज लिखता रहता हूँ, CPR इनको भी भेजता रहता हूँ मैं, आपको भी आते रहते हैं मेरे
मैं जब चुनाव लड़ूंगा तब ध्यान दूंगा
पास। नहीं सर,
Lily, but आपकी बात में I got your point. Like some of the issues are not being basically taken up. Let him ask the question and I have. Thank you. Lily, because this is being recorded, मैं चुनाव लड़ रहा हूँ.
Thank you. May I speak in Hindi?
Yeah, Hindi, English, whatever you're
अच्छा,
comfortable with.
So मेरा नाम सुरिंदर सिंह है, मैं इतिहास और राजनीतिक ज्ञान पढ़ाता हूँ अपने सेंटर पर प्राइवेटली। नीरजा जी, बचपन से पढ़ रहा हूँ मैं आपका, जब से पंजाब केस एंड एवरीथिंग, सो तब से मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ। पर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि आई वाज रिसेंटली, सॉरी इंग्लिश में पढ़ाता हूँ क्योंकि, सो आई वाज रिसेंटली रीडिंग दिस आर्टिकल इन BBC व्हिच सेज पुअर पीपल कांट बी एथिकल। सो मैं उससे थोड़ा कनेक्ट करना चाहता हूँ कि डू यू थिंक बिकॉज मेजॉरिटी ऑफ इंडियंस, मैं क्लास वाले पर्सपेक्टिव से देख रहा हूँ इसको, डू यू थिंक मेजॉरिटी ऑफ इंडियंस, बिकॉज हमारी इकोनॉमी इतना नीचे है, बिकॉज दे आर इकोनॉमिकली पुअर, दैट्स व्हाई यूजुअली दिस अनएथिकल डिलेमास की एंटी डेमोक्रेसी हो जाते हैं, या फिर मिलिट्री को आगे लाने की, मिलिट्री की जरूरत है हमें? क्या आपको लगता है कि इस वजह से, इन कारणों से, ये असुरक्षा की जो भावना है इतनी, क्या उसकी वजह से हमारे अंदर ऐसी टेंडेंसी 1951-52 से चली आ रही है, या फिर ये जो क्लास वाली जो विचारधाराएं हैं, पर्सपेक्टिव है, ये इनका कुछ खास सरोकार नहीं है, जनता अभी भी डेमोक्रेटिक है और चाहती है?
एक क्वेश्चन जूम से है और एक मेरा सवाल। जूम का क्वेश्चन इज समथिंग टू डू विद, is presidentialization of elections in state politics a response to presidentialization at the national level since Indira Gandhi time, or these are two standalone phenomena? That's one. And two, we talked about like I putting money, but I want to know basically who do big industrialists put money on, right? Like, do they look at candidates, or they and in some ways, like, do industrialists play a role who will become a PM face? I'm not saying elected, but at least within the party, who's going to lead the campaign? Anyone?
Which one to say? Development, not an election issue. I would say that, but I think there is a probably hopelessness is a strong word to use. Helplessness, that what they expect. It's not that development hasn't taken place. Of course, it's taken place, but it's not taken place as people want it. And the feeling is that if the system is not producing what I need, so election time, whatever they give me, let me at least take that. Something is coming in my hand. And to call them freebies, I mean, I have a problem with that. Like Jayalalitha would give mixer grinders for women. That is the life of women hugely.
Yes.
जो आप पत्थर पे करोगे every day, giving them. So is that a freebie, or is it something to empower them, help them? I don't know. So freebies is a, to just dismiss it as freebie. I have a problem with that. And you understand people saying, ठीक है, जो दे रहे हैं अभी तो दे रहे हैं ना, मेरे account में आ रहा है, and something is coming.
5 साल तो मिलेंगे नहीं, आज दे देने सही है.
Yeah. So what was the other one?
Something on presidentialization of national
Presidentialization.
with a response or standalone.
I think the stronger the leader, the more popular a leader, the more presidential he or she becomes. And the less the checks and balances. The comparison between Indira Gandhi and Narendra Modi, strong leaders, popular leaders, they win elections for their own people, for their parties. And the ministers, who of course they have a right to change, appoint, ministers depend on them to win elections. So the ministers will cede their power to the prime minister that much more. And also the Prime Minister's office is very strong through which the Prime Minister rules. That's the case, and that is, I'm afraid, even more true in the states. That the Chief Minister is very, very strong. Nobody dare challenge the Chief Minister. And that is something we are not even looking at. The Chief Ministers are becoming stronger
Yeah,
in
true.
that sense. So yes, but the moment you have a coalition and alliance, it's an irony, it's a paradox. You have as I say, checks and balances. You have a much more democratic functioning. It may be weaker government, but greater democratic functioning. So ultimately, the challenge is in India, I feel, is to strengthen our democratic institution. That is the way to go. They will exercise the checks and balances, no matter who comes or goes. And I think I have said this, once, Rahul, if I may just end on that note, I feel that India is like a coalition. It's so diverse a country. It's really like a coalition. And it must be ruled like a coalition, whether it's by a brute majority government or a simple majority government or an alliance. And that last voice must be heard.
Nilanjan.
Yes, competitive populism has increased in the last few years. We can look at what has happened in Rajasthan. You virtually had Ashok Gehlot coming back with a Modi template in the state. He's virtually hijacked the entire platform, the framework, the template of the BJP in the center has been, the changes here and there been actually brought about there. So there has been similar kind of template trying to redo the similar kind of welfare schemes which the people, the BJP has done. Not that the BJP has not, actually we still require, and I think somebody has to have the courage and to be able to get the opportunity, the support, to be able to find out and deeply study the number of schemes which have been started under since 2014, which have a genesis prior to 2014. It has not been studied so far. Almost everything that you actually look at, you will find that it was started in the UPA time, or it was started during the Vajpayee era, or maybe even United Front, or maybe even earlier. A lot of it has actually been re-energized is the right word which can be actually used. Jan Dhan is possibly the biggest example. Aadhaar is possibly the biggest thing. Also been weaponized in certain cases, especially about privacy and issues and all that. Insurance, the old pension scheme, so that is actually looked at. A pension is still, the demand for going back to the old pension scheme is indicative that people require more money in their wallet at the end of their career, because they're not confident that what they have, what they get will be enough for them to actually live in comfort, of the amount of comfort that they have got used to. So, and we have also seen that the BJP has changed its stance on the old pension scheme. So that is very important. We say that people are by and large not really bothered about democratic institutions. We know that people do not, Neerja also referred that, yes, or you said, Rahul, you said that we are very concerned in the media that our voice has been, media has been targeted. But also there is possibly a larger section within the media which is actually crossed over, which has decided to be the kind of, do the kind of embedded journalism which came into the vocabulary during the Iraq war. That is when the idea of embedded journalism was actually introduced. So there are a large number of journalists and media organizations which are embedded at the moment. People, I think, at least like the idea of democracy, but in the families, Indian families are by and large highly undemocratic, and this is where, you find essentially about women's choices is where the structure of the family comes down the hardest, most sharply. That is something which we have to keep in mind, and it's part of a social. So possibly it's not, emerged from within our culture. The idea of democracy has not really come through the colonial period, it did not possibly become such a strong sentiment of people. Presidentialization of elections has happened. It's there in states at the moment because there is no real challenger, no real, the word which Rahul used, no opposition leader has been cultified the way Modi was cultified from 2007 onwards, at least. The 2007 is the most decisive elections when Morka Saudakar gives a certain image to really latch on to, and then so that is it, Really going back to what I said.
And
about
what
Yeah.
about money? Do
Oh,
big
yes.
money people decide?
Well, we now know that the big money decides which party they want to fund. You can see the electoral bonds, that is the biggest sign.
Hmm.
Which party is getting the money? Who has that kind of minimum, from 10 lakh to 1 crore rupees, how much to buy those kind of bonds? Who has that kind of money? You or I or any individual citizen cannot. It's obviously the very big money bags. But yes, if they sense that the mood is turning, then believe me, they will be the first ones to really understand that the tide is turning, it's changing. Mind you, in 2004, at the end of the voting, who went into 10 Janpat?
Hmm.
It was Mukesh Ambani.
Hmm.
Everyone knows that the photograph was taken and then it became a big story. So that was a give of it. That yes, it would happen, and that's when two people, one within the BJP and one a dear family friend of ours, who we can all laugh over it, was a professional astrologer, and he actually wrote it that he indicated that there shall be a regime change, and one person leader from the BJP who told us, कि हमने आपको कहा था, और एक चीज और सुन लीजिए, ये वनवास शुरू हुआ है भारतीय जनता पार्टी. He was himself from the BJP for a very long period of time. And that is for 10 years. 2004, nobody ever imagined that the BJP is going to be out of power for 10 years. We really do not know what is going to happen. I would not find money anywhere.
So, thank you so much, both of you. This was a fascinating conversation. Sorry, we have run out of time, so I couldn't take more questions. But we can talk about, PM candidates and leaders and how much they matter. I think some of these conversations should not be just restricted to this kind of a setting, but also more sort of like gupshup charcha. That's what fascinates us, those who study politics and elections. So thank you both, Neerja Chaudhary and Nilanjan Mukhopadhyay. This was a fascinating conversation. And thank you everyone for joining us on the Zoom here in the room. We are going to, now that I mentioned in the beginning that the hiatus period is over and the conversation series has resumed again. So we have two conversations lined up. One week later is going to be the semi-final round of elections of national elections, and another one in mid-November. National security concerns and foreign policy things shape domestic politics. So look forward to having more of you here. Thank you again for joining, and thank you so much both.